Welcome and thanks for joining the Let's Talk Digital Marketing Podcast. Join host Mike Sharp of mikesonlineacademy.com as he shares valuable insights and advice, helping you to become digitally inspired. That's here on the Let's Talk Digital Marketing Podcast.
Yeah, so thank you for joining me, John.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
So the introduction here I've got is a Facebook ads, advanced Facebook ads expert. Would that be the right description?
I mean, I hate the word expert generally. So, and maybe that's just me. But like, if I ever like introduce myself to someone else about what I do, I just tend to say like a advanced Facebook ads educator or something like that. But along the same lines is fine. Yeah, I mean, it's what I'm known for, certainly.
Yeah, well, the advanced bit is crucial, isn't it? Because
yes, and honestly, it's crucial to my business generally, because it was once I started making that break, saying it's advanced, that's really when everything took off for me. Yeah,
because I remember when I was starting out with Facebook and Facebook ads, I started receiving your ads and seeing your posts, and this was around 2015, 2016.
Sure, yeah.
And you were the first person who mentioned they were a advanced Facebook marketer. So I didn't know such a thing existed at the time.
Sure.
Also, I have you down as a prolific blogger.
Yeah, that's been on and off for the last decade, but I would certainly say prolific these days. Yeah.
Millions of views of your podcasts, of your blogs and podcasts.
Sure. I mean, I think, again, both of those things, I think that this is one of those things like when you've been doing it as long as I have been, there are so many iterations that, so there's a period of time where I was blogging all the time and I was recording podcasts all the time. And then there's a period when I wasn't, or it was like kind of inconsistent. And now we're back into that again, where both of those things I'm probably doing more than I ever have before, I would say, at least for the past several months.
Yeah. Well, you certainly inspired me to start the podcasting from your podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I certainly am re-inspired, with these new shots, these 3 to 4 minute episodes I've been doing. It just makes it easier. And, I talk about it a lot actually on the show, and that just doing those and being forced to come up with these ideas where I'm going to publish a new one every day just influences all of my content. So, I've got this episode now, I should do a blog post about that, and everything takes off from there. It's changed really my entire content approach over the last 4 or 5 months.
Yeah. It's amazing to see how prolific you are. It's inspiring, because if you can do it, then I can do it, and other people can do it.
Absolutely. Like and really, I've always said there's really nothing special about my training or education or anything. It's just, if you've got an interest, whether it's Facebook ads or something else, and you've got a few skills, I'm not ultra technical. It came to any of this stuff. Like when I first started podcasting, I had no clue what I was doing. And honestly, it was just a matter of I was following Marcus Sheridan at the time, and he put out a podcast episode or a blog post, maybe both, explaining how you could create your own podcast. And I started there, and it's just a matter of having a starting place and going from there.
Yeah. Because also you're a baseball coach.
Yeah.
You fit that in around everything else.
Yeah. And really, this will probably be the final year of that. I mean,
Really?
Well, my oldest son is in college. My middle son is a senior in high school, and my youngest is in eighth grade. So he goes on to high school next year. So at least as a coach of my kids, I see the end coming. It's usually when they get to high school, I pass them on to the high school coaches. And so any other coaching from that point forward for me would just be without my kids, which is, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. It could happen, but I would bet that I won't be coaching at least for a while. Like as my son is in high school, I'm not going to be coaching while my son's playing somewhere else. I'll want to pay attention to what he's doing, which honestly, I'm in a way looking forward to this weird new period of my life where it's going to be a lot slower because coaching takes a lot of my time.
Yeah.
So really, I mean, from like March through June, July, I've learned that it is crazy. And this year I've been prepared for it. So I'm doing a lot of, pre-recording and scheduling blog posts. And like I've got blog posts scheduled through April right now. And just because it's such a hectic time with coaching.
Wow. Yeah. So can I just go over, because some listeners won't know your backstory, and they may not have heard of you, because we have listeners who are not necessarily in our sphere. So can you tell me a bit about how you started and got into Facebook advertising?
Yeah, I think the best explanation is, back in 2007, I worked for the NBA, so the National Basketball Association, and which was a whole story in and of itself. But we partnered with Facebook, and at the time it was the Facebook, I believe, when there were only 50 million people on the platform. But at the time it was this new big thing, and it was just opening up to us old folks, those people who weren't in high school or college. And when we did that, so we partnered with them to create an app, because that's before you could create your own app. And what we did was, because as the NBA, we wanted to do a bracket competition. And Facebook had actually had their own bracket they had used for March Madness for college basketball, because again, it was mainly for college kids and whatnot. And they were going to repurpose that for the NBA. So it was a good fit. And I was the first admin of the official NBA Facebook group before there were pages. And I just remember that whole madness of what that was like. But so that was like my first exposure to trolls and everything else. And but that, all that said, that's when I first signed up for Facebook in spring of 2007. And I fell in love with the platform because as a kid, I moved around a lot. And so there were a whole bunch of people I just assumed I would never see again, talk to again, know what happened to them from 25, 30 years prior. And to be reconnected with them was amazing. So I was just hooked on the platform in the early going, just from a personal perspective, but obviously I was using it from a business sense as well. So, I stayed with the NBA for 3 seasons. We had to live in New Jersey for that, which wasn't our first choice. So before the pandemic, when, back in the day, you couldn't really work remotely. They wouldn't allow me to work remotely. So I left, we moved back to Colorado, which is where we were before, and went through a series of layoffs. And over the next 2.5 years, and once I was laid off for the second time, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I started a website, didn't know what I was going to do with it. It was pretty much just going to be, this is me. These are the experiences I've had. Hire me, pretty much was the whole thought process behind johnloomer.com. And just, I had all the time in the world to do whatever I wanted, which was kind of overwhelming without a job. So I was just like, writing about stuff that's happening in marketing. And some of it was like small business, nonprofit, because that was kind of my world as well at that time. And then eventually I started writing more and more about Facebook marketing and eventually Facebook ads. So this was started 2011, and really it took off, within about 6 months to a year, where, oh, wait, I've actually got a business here. It was about a year though, actually, until I actually launched my first product, where I was like, because I didn't see myself as a business owner at all. Like initially, again, it was all about finding a job. But once I actually built a following, which was really unexpected, I was like, well, I can maybe sell something, or at least try. And then so I released my first product and people bought it. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've got something here. And that just changed everything. So that was early going, but it's all been pretty much Facebook ads focused, especially since 2012, I'd say.
Wow. Did you?
Which 10 years? I mean, 10 years.
Yeah.
That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, celebrating 10 years.
Yeah.
In the Facebook ads business.
Right. Yeah.
So, because didn't you create an app for Facebook before Facebook you could create an app on the platform?
So it wasn't that I created one. It was that when we were with the MBA, we partnered with Facebook. So Facebook actually created it. They repurposed it. So that was before you could actually create your own app. And I guess after that, I'm just trying to think here. Like my experiences after that, like I was involved with an app, but it wasn't a Facebook app. So I was with American Cancer Society, and we did this More Birthdays app. Man, just thinking through the years, because it's so much has passed. But yeah, it's been quite the journey.
What did the baseball app do? What was the?
Oh, there's not a baseball app. So there's the basketball app. There was
basketball app.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was just a repurposing of Facebook's March Madness app that they did for the NBA. So the NBA was in their playoffs, and you just needed to pick who was going to win, kind of thing. That's all it was. I can't even visualize what it looked like anymore. I mean, that's 2007. It's been a lot of time since then.
Yeah. Wow.
Just so much has changed with the platform, and like why you'd use the platform, and like how ads actually worked once they started. There were so many spammy ads. Like people complain about ads now, but you have no idea unless you saw ads in the late 2000s. And the just the way you targeted was just so basic initially, before it got incredibly powerful. But it's just been really crazy to be along for all the changes along the way.
Yeah, because we're old enough to remember it, but there was a thing called the Power Editor.
Oh my goodness.
And didn't that have a big influence on your career?
I would say that was probably the biggest influence on my career, and that, again, advanced Facebook advertising, Power Editor, if anyone remembers. So
yeah, explain it for younger listeners.
Well, again, I'm trying to remember the order of things.
The timeline.
Right, because I mean there was an original way to create ads, and then there was Power Editor, and I can't even remember, because it's before the Ads Manager. It was called something else, and then there was Power Editor. And Power Editor is like this obscure kind of underground, advanced, but very complicated and confusing and probably buggy way. So anyone
by Facebook, was it? It wasn't
no, it was. It was.
It
was created by Facebook. Yeah.
Okay.
But it was so kind of underground, and really only the more advanced advertisers used it. But it created so much confusion and frustration with people who got into it for the first time, that like once I kind of created that niche, I mean, not only did I get a lot of traffic, and and really there was a need out there for people to learn about this product, but it was also kind of light bulb moments. Like, who are the people who are going to want to learn more about Power Editor? These are the people who are deeply invested in Facebook ads. They want to spend more. They want to be more advanced. And that's really when it's like, okay, first of all, this is my first training course, and it was hugely successful. But also, it's like this created like definitely that new true niche for me that's what I need to focus on. And it was not obvious at all that that's what I needed to do before that moment. So really, Power Editor was big. And like over the years, all of a sudden, okay, well, Power Editor is like how you get access to all these additional features. And I really wish I could even remember what all those additional features were. But then eventually, like, we started seeing more and more being folded into Ads Manager, because eventually Ads Manager is originally Ads Manager is more of like a streamlined, almost like boost button-ish, really simple way of running ads. If you wanted any of the extra features, you'd use Power Editor, and more started being folded in, eventually to the point where Ads Manager Power Editor was shut down. So yeah, I'd love to see the timeline. But the nice thing about writing all those blog posts over the years, like every once in a while I'll go back and kind of see the timeline based on like all the stuff I was writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in the future, when kids are studying history, your blog posts will be part of the curriculum.
That's right. Exactly.
What features that Facebook have introduced do you think have made a big difference? Because some have come and gone, but are there any consistent features which are game changers that they've introduced?
I think the biggest one, at least for me, was the combination of the pixel and just really everything that it allowed you then to do. So whether it's targeting people who visited my website, or getting reporting on the fact that my ad led to this number of purchases or registrations or whatever it be, or the optimization for that type of activity, which eventually led to also like the custom events. So, now I can track not just whether someone purchased or registered or something like that, but some very, basically whatever it is I want to track. So like, did they scroll when they read a blog post? Did they spend more than a minute, more than 2 minutes on a blog post? Did they view more than, one page or 2 pages on my site during a session? Those kinds of things you could start tracking, and you could start optimizing for. You could start targeting people who perform those events. And for me, that's the kind of stuff that got me super engaged and interested and experimental, and like, what are the things I can do with this?
Yeah. What is the dumbest thing they've introduced, or the wackiest?
I don't know. I feel like just in general, it's not even so much like oh man, as far as a dumb feature, I'm sure I could come up with something. I was never a fan of the boost button originally. It's gotten better over the years. Right now, that Advantage Plus campaign creation, I think, is the most overblown, ridiculous. Like, it's not even a feature, but they make it sound like it's this amazing thing. So anyway, like, most people don't even have it, so most people don't even know what this is. But first of all, they've come out with this new whole Meta Advantage product line. There's mostly just renaming stuff, but since October, they've been testing this Advantage Plus campaign creation that makes people think this is some powerful new way of creating a campaign. And all it is a dumbed down version of campaign creation for running a conversions ad, where it hides the defaults and doesn't allow you to change them. And that's it. But they package it in a way that's like, this is an advanced automation and all this stuff. It's to simplify, your life as an advertiser. And so to me, that I just found that to be kind of annoying. It seems to be the direction they're heading right now, which has me concerned. I did a whole podcast on it that came out today. For anyone who's listening in the future, this was what is today, the 25th of March. But that, like, it's all just like a renaming, but the focus seems to be on automating things. And when I hear that, it's all about taking control away from us, which as long as it works properly, great. But I've seen too many things that Facebook has done over the last decade for optimization. It doesn't work the way as an advertiser I want it to. So I'd like to have some control.
Sure. What's your view of Meta, the Meta rebrand?
Oh, I hate it. Well, this is mainly from a selfish point of view, right? So I have a decade worth of content on my website dedicated to advanced Facebook ads. And now they're going to be like, no, it's not Facebook anymore. It's Meta. Now, of course, we've got it's still the Facebook platform, but technically, when you're talking about advertising across Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp and whatever, it's Meta now. I find that really annoying. So first of all, nothing really changed. It's just the name that they're trying to change. So it's not like, okay, we've got this whole new set of features that fall under Meta. It's just rebranding, and there are lots of arguments for why that's actually happening. It could be Facebook/Meta running away from PR disasters and whatnot. But Meta is also such a broad term that's used for other things. Like that's got to be terrible for search for them even. Like Meta has been used for so many other things as opposed to Facebook is a very specific brand. So, and also I find it hard right now as an educator because, people searching for Meta ads help, or are they searching for Facebook ads help? Does the new advertiser jumping in even know what Meta is?
Yeah.
And does it matter? Because it really doesn't. Like it's one thing like, oh, I should educate them, but it really doesn't even matter. It's just a name. So the whole thing bothered me because should I go in and update all my blog posts, over 1,000 blog posts over the years, to make sure that I start mentioning Meta? And I still can't even do it today. Like when I record podcasts, I'll often say Facebook and or Meta, whatever you want to call it, because I just can't even say it. Like I don't like saying it. I know I should. I don't like it, but that's my grumpy old man, get off my lawn feeling about the Meta name, I guess.
Yeah. How do you see the company kind of in the future? Do you think it will continue on a forward trajectory, or will it be overtaken by someone else, another company?
I don't see them being overtaken necessarily. I just think everything is changing. The question is how much adoption there's going to be for the metaverse, for blockchain, like all these things that I don't even completely understand, to be honest with you, that really could completely change the way we interact with the internet, which could harm Facebook and Meta, whatever, and lots of other platforms out there. I am terrible at predictions. I don't really even try to predict. We know where Facebook/Meta wants to go with this. They want to go in the metaverse. We also know what's happening with privacy trends and with advertising, and it's all going in a different direction. It's going to change a lot. I don't know what that means for the survival of Facebook/Meta. Yeah, it's something that it's certainly not the dominant company that it was a few years ago. Now, certainly they're huge. They're huge. They stopped growing at least in the US, Canada for the first time. I think in the first quarter or last quarter of last year, I believe. And that's certainly a sign, but everything's changing so much. It's really difficult to predict how that platform will be used in 2 years from now, because that platform could look completely different. It's all just a matter of how the company is going to adjust to the times, or kind of dictate the times, which has kind of been the way things have gone as well.
Sure. Are there any evergreen principles of Facebook advertising that have been consistent from 2011 to 2022? Are there all the changes?
To a point, right? So I would say that targeting has always been important, but it used to be way more important, right? I guess it depends on who you ask too. Like Facebook's been all about you should go broad so they can properly optimize these days, and you don't need to go micro targeting. I still like to micro target in certain situations, but still, like reaching the right people. Ultimately, it's this: you need to reach the right people with the right message at the right time. I mean, that's what's been true forever. It's just a matter of, is it you who are making sure that happens, or is it the Facebook automated systems that are helping you make sure that happens, is the question. So I think the creative, the copy creative have become more important now than they were previously. Whereas the targeting has probably become a little bit less important, at least from a manual perspective. But I mean, I think ultimately it's still marketing, right? You need to put out messaging and creative that inspires action, and with your target audience, the ideal person. Like, what is it you want them to do? We've got to inspire that to happen.
Yeah. Are there any? What's your view on iOS 14 and 15 and onwards? Does that mean advertisers have to change their strategy completely, going towards email lists, collecting email addresses and using off Facebook methods?
Yeah. In terms of the sense of urgency on that, it kind of depends. Like as far as iOS 14, 15 plus go, I mean, you're only impacted in the sense of the number of people in your audience who are consistently on an iOS device and who have opted out. So I think that's been somewhat overblown, depending on who you are, because I've 12% of my traffic, I think, is iOS. For whatever reason, a very high percentage is desktop, even to this day. So I think it's just office, type of consumption. So that doesn't impact me a ton. Some people obviously are 50% or more. That could be an issue. The question would be, should you keep people on the Facebook platform, Meta, whatever, on the Facebook platform instead? Because then none of the opt-out stuff applies. That's certainly something to consider. I think the main thing is, regardless of whether you are impacted now, this is the direction we're going. There's going to be less tracking in the future, whether it's iOS or Android or something else. We're talking about browsers. I think even email, honestly, is heading in this direction. It is a bit of a tug and pull, right? So on one hand, you're like, okay, I need to own as much of my audience as I can. But if it's all on your website, that impacts your remarketing. It impacts the tracking and reporting with your Facebook ads, because you're not going to be able to track certain people across websites and apps the way you used to. But you also don't want to keep everything on Facebook, on the Facebook platform, because that's just a huge risk to put it all in their hands. So it's going to be this, I guess, debate, trying to understand how best you can build your audience while limiting and mitigating that risk involved. Maybe finding other avenues for tracking. So I do a lot of URL parameters with Google Analytics to help verify the results of Facebook's reporting. It's going to get harder to do a lot of things that we've long been doing. So all this powerful stuff I'm talking about with the Pixel, I mean, unless there's some sort of solution, which there could be, these things will become more and more difficult, and that's just going to be an adjustment.
Yeah. I mean, you're big on email marketing.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said that my primary goal with Facebook ads is to get people to my website and to get them on my email list. That selling to them is then passed off to my email list, because I don't necessarily want to sell. My priority isn't to sell to people who are exposed to me for the first time, because I think they're less likely to be my ideal customer than someone who has read a lot of my stuff, who has been on, say, my free webinar or something else, and understands my teaching style. So that's why I don't care a whole lot about selling on Facebook, except for a lot of my remarketing efforts. Like, oh, you're on my email list, or you subscribe to this free thing, or you visit my site all the time. You should sign up, for Power Hitters Club. So yeah, email has always been huge. Obviously, we've got other challenges with that, just getting people to see our emails that we didn't have as big of an issue with, say, 5 years ago. But that's just a constant challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some more kind of fun questions here as we're getting towards the end of the interview. Don't worry, it's not. It's not. So, what is your favorite type of music?
Oh man, I'm actually a big music buff, but I have a very wide range. So
James Brown in the background there.
James Brown's in the background. So within that genre, it'd be James Brown, Curtis Mayfield, Al Green, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder are kind of my core, that classic soul, which was, I think, the main reason I really started listening to them, probably in the mid 90s or so, was because I was an 80s, 90s hip hop kid who grew up with that music. So that is highly inspirational to me. But I also was deeply into some of that modern rock stuff back in the 90s. So Primus, Pixies, Nirvana, especially, and even classic rock, like, Led Zeppelin and CCR and Doors and whatnot, and even classic jazz. So Miles Davis and John Coltrane. So it's a little bit of everything. I can't even explain how all that happened, but I love music though. It's kind of always in my soundtrack of the day.
Yeah. Do you play music while you're working?
No, I find it too distracting. But it's like my must while I run is music. Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. What is your favorite type of food?
Love dark chocolate. Kind of an addict there. After that, it almost gets too plain and obvious. Like, I love like a New York style pizza.
Oh, that sounds good.
It's good. Well, because when I worked for the NBA, I didn't know what real pizza was until then, because I worked out of both New Jersey and Manhattan in New York, and to get an actual New York pizza was like eye-opening to me. It was so amazing.
Wow. Okay. And what is the favorite, your favorite country that you visited?
Oh wow. So honestly, the traveling I did was right after I graduated from college, and I went across Europe with a friend of mine for 6 weeks. I think it was a 6-week trip, like 13 different countries. I think that's a tough call. I think Switzerland, potentially. Belgium too. I mean, UK was awesome as well.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's like so many places we went to. It was just, it was awesome. It was a great trip.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
I would love to go back. Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh no, you mentioned Belgium and Switzerland, which are big chocolate places.
Yeah. It was more of a, admittedly, it was more of a wine drinking tour. But, but yeah, chocolate indeed.
And if just going back to John Loomer, what is the best, or yourself, of course, what is the best way to kind of get into, John Loomer? What's the first thing someone should do to check you out?
I think it kind of depends on how you like to consume content, because I do a little bit of everything. But johnloomer.com is the primary place to go. I mean, that's where everything is. So whether it's my blog posts, you can now access my podcast there as well. So you could, within the site, go to pubcast.johnloomer.com as well to get the podcast episodes. I would start there. And, before you even jump into, a product or anything, start reading. I've got a free monthly webinar as well that I've restarted this year that gives you 5 main tips on what's happening right now related to Facebook advertising. And I think that's the best way to go. Yeah.
And those details are on the website.
Absolutely. Yep.
Cool. Well, thanks, John. It's been a privilege and an honor. And I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you having me on, Mike. Thank you.
No, and hopefully we can have a round 2 at some point.
Sounds good.
So I've got planned for the rest of the day. Because obviously over there it's what time is it over there? Is it a
little after 10 a.m. So I've got a run.
Really, yeah.
I've got a run to go on. We've got a big baseball weekend coming up, so I need to get ahead of the recording for the podcast, because there's no way I'm doing anything this weekend. My middle son has a high school game today at 4:15, so I have to get to that. But yeah, those are kind of the main priorities.
Yeah.
Out there, was it about 5 o'clock out there right now? What is it?
4:10.
Okay.
Although after this weekend, next week, the clocks go forward.
Right.
5:10. Over 5:10 this time next week.
Yeah, that's one of the things that from this business I didn't even realize that happened. So because of all the stuff we have scheduled on a weekly basis, this time of the year we always run into this confusion of, oh, wait a minute, what time was that thing actually supposed to be? And people would miss, whether it's a webinar or training or something, because it's time confusion.
Yeah, I mean, it works out well for me. The strategy session works out well for me, because it's at the end of the day pretty much, and everything's done by then.
Good.
And probably works well in the US, because it's the start of the day, so you kind of starting the day with a buzz.
Yeah, and honestly, that's the first time I think I've really scheduled anything that's that early for me. It's not even super early, but 10 a.m. Like almost everything's always been in the afternoon for me. And the one thing I have to, it's impossible to make everybody happy, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The Australians are the ones that I feel worse for. It's like anything before
Australian members.
Yeah. But obviously they're not going to be on a strategy session because that is way too early. And even my one-on-ones, I will do at 1 or 2 o'clock my time, which is at the latest, I think 4 a.m. for someone in Australia. So it's tough.
I'll put the links in the show notes of the podcast as well, because I use Anchor as the publisher, and that publishes to Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. And I know for definite on Anchor and Spotify, the links go through, so they're all live links. So I put a link to the John Loomer website on there.
Okay.
As well.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So really appreciate it. It's I was very nervous before I started, I have to admit. It felt like my wedding day.
No reason to be nervous. No, you did great.
I know.
Well, I remember the first time And it was ridiculous when I think about it. The first time I recorded a podcast, and I didn't even interview anybody, and was using all that stuff that Marcus Sheridan said to do. And the thing to remember, like when I did that, it's like, first of all, it's not like it was live, but I was nervous and I was like even kind of shaky. And the thing is, like, probably no one heard it. Like when you put out your first episode, like no one even knows it exists.
Yeah.
So it's like, why was I nervous? It really didn't make any sense. And but just the way I see everything is like, you know, all the imperfect stuff that I did over the years was so important, because you overcome fears to do it and you learn from it. It gets easier the next time. You know, you kind of figure out the way you want to do things in the future, and nothing to be scared of, certainly.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I hope it was good for you.
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I read about when you spoke at social media world.
Yeah.
And that was
terrifying.
A lot of people. Yeah.
Well, and I've just never enjoyed public speaking anyway, meaning like it just terrifies me. So to do that was a really difficult thing to overcome. And like eventually over the years, it got easier. But I remember I actually reached out to Chris Brogan, and he helped me out the first time, because I was like, I've never done this. I'm afraid I'm just going to freeze. Like I don't. And he kind of gave me a template of, you know, things I think about in terms of putting it together. It was like, you know, having a story, and you know, to make sure it's interesting, you know. And so it was really because of him that I started tying what I was talking about to, you know, why I was doing it, you know, why this stuff is important to me, and talking about my family. And of course that led to becoming a consistent, like whenever I did a speech, I would end up crying because I'd end up talking about my kids and just get emotional. And but I think just having that focus and helped me a lot. So
yeah. Wow. Cool. So I guess I'll see you at the
strategy session.
strat session next. And
sounds good.
And in terms of obviously I'd edit it down if needed. And I'll send you a copy first to make sure you're fine with it. With everything, with the final.
I wouldn't worry too much about that. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Oh, okay, cool. So probably will be released in 2 or 3 weeks, because I've got like a backlog of ones to put out.
That's great.
And I'll probably use snippets as well to promote it. Would that be okay?
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's fine.
What I mean, just your voice on there, and like I've got like an assistant who does little videos for me from the podcast with little snippets, and then listen to the whole thing here. So if you're okay with that,
yeah, of course,
I can promote it that way.
That's fine.
Cool.
All right.
So, yeah, have a good weekend. Is it sunny over there, or is it?
Yeah, it's actually supposed to be warm this weekend for once. So not sure in terms of Celsius, but like mid-70s this weekend. So really the first nice weekend. So it's been good.
Yeah. Oh, it's been beautiful here.
Yeah.
For winter, well, for early spring, it's been amazing today.
Good.
So
Well, enjoy
because of that, because of sometimes my computers overheat and then shut down. I'm thinking, oh, don't do it in the middle of this.
Yeah.
Cheers, John.
Well, it's been fun, and thanks for having me on, and enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, you too. You're a star.
Thanks very much. It. Thanks, Mike.
Cheers, John. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.